Hello, I'm Florence Dowrick, and this is Myle Ali Faraz. We are MajorTim.space Honorary Young Ambassadors. We are also joined by Oliver Ukereghe, MajorTim.space 2024 to 2025 Young Ambassador. And today we are all interviewing Brenda Longman, who has been the voice of Soo for 30 years now. It's been a very long.
Longer than that, Florence.
Would you introduce yourself, Brenda?
I would. I've been the voice of Soo now for, let me work this out, 43 years. Yeah, 43 years. A lot longer than 30.
So, you've been the voice of Soo for over 40 years. How did you take over the role as the voice of Soo? Were you asked to take the part, or did you need to audition?
No, I did need to audition, but I did happen to know Matthew Corbett, who used to be in charge of Sooty, in another capacity because he was an actor, and I met him through the theatre, and he decided, we met together when we brought the Sooty Show to the theatre in Farnham, and my brother and I were both singers then. We were singing as well as acting, and he invited us over to his house for dinner. We became friends, and then 2 years later, Matthew's mother, it was decided she sounded too old for the voice of Soo, and it was decided that I would be one of the people to audition for the part. And the rest is history, really. And that was 1981. When you weren't even thought of, any of you.
My dad was 1 year old when he became the voice of Soo.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness. Gosh. Oh, I feel like somebody's great-grandmother, really. Okay.
You don't look like it.
Oh, thank you.
Florence and I recently interviewed Phil Fletcher, the voice and puppeteer of Hacker T-Dog. Are you the puppeteer for Soo? And if so, have you puppeteered any other types of puppet rather than love puppets?
Good question. Dear Phil, he's a great friend, but unlike Phil, I don't puppeteer. I did puppeteer at the very beginning. When I started, I did puppeteer, and why that dropped off was because Matthew was writing more and more dialogue for Soo. And because Sooty doesn't speak, and because Sweep only squeaks, their dialogue is very, very much less than Soo's. So actually, at the moment, it's a bit in reverse. Soo doesn't speak quite as much. But if you look back at the early episodes in the 1980s and the 1990s, Soo does all the talking. And Matthew Corbett, the reason for that was he thought the more dialogue he gave Soo, the less he would actually have to learn, which was quite a good ruse for him. The less lines he'd have to learn. So it would have been impossible to puppeteer and speak all that amount of dialogue. With Phil, he's ad-libbing. He's got a rough script. So it's quite easy to puppeteer and ad-lib. But a lot of the stuff we were doing had camera cues, so it had to be precise. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yes. Next question.
Do you feel that any of the characters changed at all when Richard Cadell took over from Matthew, and if so, in which way?
Do I think that any of the characters Ollie? Were different?
Yeah.
I'll answer this honestly. When Richard took over, bless him, this was at the end of the 90s. The actual money that the commercial television companies put into children's television has to be aimed at a certain age range. So when we were doing stuff in the 90s, it was from age 5 up to family entertainment. And when Richard took over, the children's television companies had to rigidly put the programs into age ranges. Now, that is all because of the advertising. So Sooty was put into a lower age range, really, so that they could advertise nappies and goodness knows what for younger children. Whereas before, it was kind of aimed at a family, a complete cross-section. So the dialogue and the storylines and everything, not the silliness, because that's always been there, the slapstick and the simplicity of it, that never changes with any of them. But I noticed with Soo, she's a bit kind of dumbed down. She was more like an action woman 20 years ago than she is now. So her character's changed. But Sooty and Sweep are pretty much the same, I think. And have been since Harry started in 1952. Sweep came in, I think, in 1950. Oh gosh, I should know this. 58, or 4 years later, anyway. Yeah.
When Myle and I interviewed Phil Fletcher, he discussed that when puppeteering Hacker, he had to have a screen to view what the camera was seeing. Did the puppeteers on the Sooty Show also have this?
Yes, they all have what they call reverse monitors. A bit like here now, because if I'm sticking this is my right hand and it appears on the left of the screen. But when you've got a monitor, it has to be around the other way. Yes, they do. So they're all on their tummies watching the monitors. And I have a monitor as well to do voiceover in front of me, just so that I can see what the camera is seeing and not the action in front of me. You need to see what the camera, which is the eye, is actually seeing. So yes, they all have reverse monitors.
So why is Soo spelled S-O-O instead of S-U-E?
Do
Is
you
it to
know
match
what,
the double O in Sooty?
Myle, that's an excellent question. And there are two reasons why. One, she's Chinese, S-O-O. And there are Sues in, and the second one is it's half of Sooty.
Yeah. So I kind of guessed it.
Yeah. But so many people spell it S-U-E and it's wrong.
I did as well until I did some research for this.
Yeah. Yes, that's the reason, really.
Yep.
Next question.
Right.
When Richard took over the Sooty Show, did Matthew have any special requests as to how he should continue with the show?
Well, what happened actually, it was a bit messy, Ollie, because there was a lovely girl called Liana Bridges and Richard. This is before, are we talking about when Richard took over as presenter or when Richard bought it? Because they're two different things. Richard took over in, I think it was 2000 or 1999 with Liana Bridges, and they were two presenters together. And then poor Liana got the elbow. I'm not quite sure what happened, but she was told that she was surplus to requirements, and Richard took over as the presenter. The show itself got sold on and sold on and sold on, and it was heading to go over a cliff. It really was. And if it hadn't been for Richard, 4 or 5 years later, actually buying it with his own money, it wouldn't still be going. But I think Matthew was on his knees thanking Richard for actually keeping it going. So he didn't really have any special instructions to say, this is what I want you to do. Because, and I think he still is absolutely thrilled with what Richard does, because Richard's very, very clever. And he took it right the way back down again to how Harry had dealt with the three puppets. And I, having worked with the three of them, and worked with Sooty longer than anybody now on the planet, Richard's a cross between Harry and Matthew. That's what I think. So But no, in fact, the fact that Richard bought it was wonderful for Matthew, because he knew it was on. He said that Sooty was on exactly the right hands, or in the right hands. Mm.
Did you ever meet Marjorie Corbett, the original voice and puppeteer of Soo?
I certainly did. Yes, she was called Tobes. Did you know that she had a nickname, Tobes, because they very cruelly called her Tobes, which is short for Toby Jug, and she was quite frightening, actually, Florence. She was, yeah, she was fine. I did meet her, and I think she didn't look, I can't remember what year she died. I know I went to her funeral, but obviously she used to watch me on the television after I'd taken over. And Sue originally wasn't a puppet, she was on a stick. So when Marjorie did her, she wasn't a puppeteer, she was like on a mop stick. So she didn't really puppeteer her either, bless her. But yeah. And all she ever seemed to do is stick the kettle on. I'll make a cup of tea. I think she went, would you like a cup of tea, Mr. Corbin? So, but yeah, she was the boss, actually. She was the one in charge of Harry and all of them.
Make sure they're not misbehaving.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I read in 2001, Sheila Clark took over the role for Sue for the second and third seasons of the show. Was there a particular reason for this change?
Yes, they thought they could save money by she puppeteered Sue, and they thought they could save money by having one person doing it.
Yeah.
And they recorded 2 series, and also I was at the National Theatre doing Noises Off.
Yeah.
And I was really, to try and film the 2, I turned down a lot of work because of Sooty. I turned down Les Miserables and things like that, Western musicals, because they're a year's contract, and I would have to have 3 months out to do 13 episodes of Sooty. So by then, A, they wanted to save money, and B, I was busy doing acting work, and that's why she
was sort of completely dedicated then to something.
Sorry, Myle, I can't hear you.
So you were like completely sort of dedicated then?
What, to Sue or to?
You said you turned down offers from others.
I'll tell you, well, of course, there's the financial aspects. When Les Miserables started, that was the very first time that a musical had ever been on for a year. It usually would run for 3 months, 4 months. Suddenly, with Andrew Lloyd Webber, and at that time, suddenly all these musicals started going on and on and on. Phantom of the Opera, that never happened. That was unheard of. But Les Mis, Phantom, and all of that all started to keep being on in the West End instead of running for 3 months. I'd been doing Sooty for 10 years or something, and suddenly I get offered a show, and I would have had to have left Sooty forever to actually take up the offer. But by the time it got to 2000 and Matthew had gone, and Sheila Clark, I think they filmed two years in one hit. And poor old Sheila, I think she got quite a lot of criticism as well for it. And McDonald's that year, when Sheila did it, McDonald's came and wanted Sue the Panda for a voiceover for their Easy Meal.
Yeah.
So they contacted my agent. My agent said, "Oh, she's not Sue the Panda," and they said, "Oh, it's Sheila Clark." And they said, "No, we want the real Sue the Panda." So I ended up doing that. It wasn't McDonald's You didn't see Soo, but they wanted my voice because they reckoned that people recognised it and trusted it, and they would buy a meal that Soo would have endorsed. That's basically what it was.
That's funny. Okay,
And
interesting.
but then that's when the whole show was sort of on a knife edge. When they got rid of me.
You're the star.
Well, I don't know about that, but it just seemed that it coincided with that, which is why Richard, when he bought it, made sure I was brought back again.
Yep.
Why do you think the Sooty Show has been so popular for so many years?
Because of its simplicity. It's always going to be popular with people who can actually operate the puppet. They're such simple puppets, A, to look at, and B, anybody can put their hand into a puppet, and such recognizable characters. And I think because they were so beloved by people in the 50s, they've handed it down. So you have got your mum and dad, your granny, your uncle, your aunt, your great uncle, your great aunt, all remembering them. And I think they remember them with love, and they try and pass that love down through the generations. And that's how it's continued. And they know it's sort of safe, I think. And with the touring stage shows that Richard has taken out this year, because it's the 75th anniversary, loads of the people in the audience aren't children at all. They're all adults because they still love it. But it is that simplicity, I think, and the fact that they don't talk. They're a bit like your dog or your cat, because your dog or your cat doesn't talk. But of course Soo does and bosses them all around. I've got an Amazon delivery that's just come to my door. I'm not quite sure what to do about it.
Sooty wants to tell me something. Oh, were there any times you had to improvise while voicing Soo, or did you always work to a script?
No, I had to improvise loads of times. Hopefully to great effect. Yes, because what would happen is that some of the stunts where the puppets would have to pick up a glass of milk or whatever, and that would be knocked over, and Soo would be saying, "For goodness sake, clear that up, Sweep, I've told you," all that sort of thing. And there's a famous "It'll Be All Right on the Night" thing where they're trying to put some flowers into a flower press, and the puppets are trying to put wing nuts. Now, if you can imagine with your two paws there, Florence, trying to get hold of a small wing nut and put it onto a screw, and they kept on and on and on doing it. I think we had about 24 takes. So in the end, yeah, you have to improvise. But I did improvise a bit anyway, I'm afraid. Particularly because it was dialogue with Matthew and Soo, and he would say something that was off script, and then so would she. Yeah, yes, indeed. And we'd put in our own private gags as well. Oh, it was such fun. I can't tell you how much fun it was. Brilliant.
I can imagine it.
It was. I used to have to book about a week off after we'd done the series because I was not suffering from nervous exhaustion from laughing so much. Any other questions? Where are we? Question 16.
So, Sooty wants to tell me something as well, or ask. So, he's asking,
yes,
why did Harry make him squeak and not bark?
It was Harry's brother, Leslie, who first operated Sweep. And they were, as I say, they were musicians. And I was talking about the clarinet reed before. And I think it made them laugh that night. Well, it does. It makes everybody laugh, that Sweep squeaking. And so it was Leslie that came up with that noise, Leslie Corbett. And yeah, that I think it's because it's a funny sound, just because it's a funny sound. And it works. You have to admit
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah, it is quite funny. It's like
Yeah.
you see a dog
very-
and it's like,
He's also very expressive with his squeaking, I find.
Yeah.
You can tell what's going on.
I'm sorry about this,
you
Mark.
know what they're saying, even though they just
Exactly. Because what they do, what he does is they're syllables, aren't they? So it's yeah.
I feel like being able to do that is like a proper sort of really peculiar art.
Yeah. Especially with the clarinet. I don't think I've ever played the clarinet.
Honestly, I'm quite surprised to how they make that sound. I thought it's like some like squeaky rubber apparatus sort of thing, but no, it's just
No, it's a reed, and it's the air going across, flowing across the reed. Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite surprising for me, definitely.
You trained as an opera singer.
Yes.
What led down that path, and how did you go from opera singer to voice actor?
Well, I'll be completely honest. I went to my headmaster at school, and it was quite strict in those days. And I wanted to play the guitar and sing. I wanted to play the guitar, and he said, and I wanted to go to evening classes to learn the guitar. And he said, no, I don't think you should go to evening classes because it'll interfere with your homework. And if you think you can sing, we'll get somebody down from the county to hear you sing. And then you'll get a grant to have singing lessons at the weekends. And that's exactly what happened. So all the way through my school years, from 13 to 18, I had singing lessons until I left. But I was all set to be a teacher. I wanted to be an actor, but I always sung anyway. I sang in church choirs and all sorts of things and performed. And they said, no, we've spent all this money on you. You are going to have to train as a singer, which meant opera, really. Opera because of the size of my voice. I had a big, big voice. So I went to a college in Winchester, which was wonderful. It took 20 music students each year. And I went there for 2 years. And then I went to the Royal Academy of Music for another 3 years. And I was ever so old when I stopped being a student. And because I'd had all that money spent on me, and also I'm a bit lazy, really, because it was easy. It was easy. In those days, unlike today, you didn't have to pay for your education. No university grant or anything like that. It was all paid for. Now, my argument is, and then I was offered a part with an opera company, but I wasn't actually wedded and passionate about opera at all. I loved music, but I loved the spoken word and acting as much. And so it was a kind of a windy old path until I got to where I really wanted to be and knew I'd come home when I walked into a theatre. But what I say is, if I'd become a famous opera singer and I'd sung at La Scala Milan or in any of the other opera houses in the world, I wouldn't have reached as many people as I do, or my voice wouldn't, as many as doing Soo the Panda, which has gone out to millions and millions of people. Not singing, but it's still my voice.
Do you have any input into the scripts written for Soo?
No, I did, but not anymore. No. Richard's a dear friend, but he's quite, quite controlling in that way. No. He knows I'd take over. That's yeah, not really.
So, out of every episode that you've been in, whether it may be with Matthew or Richard, do you have a particular favourite? And if so, why?
Well, yes, my favourite is Sooty and Co. because
Yeah.
I played that character Mo in there, so I was
Yeah,
also,
I've seen that episode.
yeah. Well, Matt used to write lots of nice episodes for Mo, so it
Yeah.
was very rewarding to do that, and it was very silly, and there was talk about actually doing a Mo series afterwards without the puppets, just as a character. And I think somebody wrote it actually, but it didn't get commissioned. But
Yeah.
that was the happiest and favourite time because it was stretching me. It was actually stretching me, and there are certain scenes where Mo's talking
Yeah.
to Sue as well, which is quite different.
Yeah, it must have been a bit awkward for you to talk to Sue.
Well, it was quite funny because I'd record the Sue, and then somebody else would have the puppet there, and then they'd play her voice to me down on the floor. No, it was good fun actually.
Yeah.
Do you have to do anything particular to look after your voice in order to voice Sue?
Good question. I should do, shouldn't I? But I don't. I don't. I just open my mouth and hope for the best. Sometimes, like if I'm doing a play, I've just done a play where I was on stage for 2 hours each night, constantly talking. And of course, the morning after, your voice has kind of dropped quite low. And I get asked to do celebrity messages. And there have been a couple of occasions where I've been struggling with Sue, actually. So, but there's not a lot I can do about that. So, no, I don't really look after it like I should.
Have you ever been Have you ever been recognised in public as the voice of Soo?
Do you know what? Not as the voice of Sue, but actually have been recognised as Mo, which quite recently I went for an eye test. And I've never been so shocked in my life. This guy was sort of looking in my face and he said, I know you. What do you do? I said, well, I'm an actress. And he said, oh, well, I've seen you on television then. So I told him, he said, no, I haven't seen that. And then I said, the Sooty Show. And he went, oh, you're Mo, aren't you? And so so that's happened a couple of times, which I find extraordinary because I've got that terrible wig on. But I don't get recognised as a voice, no. I'm quite pleased, actually, about that because, yes, I wouldn't really like to be recognised all over the place because you can walk around. But you can phone people up and book tables at restaurants and say, Sue the Panda here.
It must be quite entertaining to see their reactions of Sue the Panda phoning them.
Yeah, but it's what's great is it's actually seeing people's reaction when they find out who you are. It's really weird. I don't quite understand it. They get terribly excited.
Have you ever gone out in public with like Sue on your hands?
No. Oh, I've opened. Yeah, having said that, I've turned on Christmas lights as Sue. With Sue on my hand, and I've done open fates and things. Yes, I've done that. Yeah.
So
I haven't got. I want one of those boxes that and somebody was meant to be making me one, and it's never turned up. But so I have to kind of shield her with my arm and do it. But yeah, I wish I could throw my voice, but unfortunately, I haven't got that skill.
Yeah. So on the note of Mo, was the character Mo written with the intention of you playing her, or did you have to audition and you happened to land the part?
No, it was absolutely Matthew's creation for me, based
Yeah.
on an actress who he was obsessed with, or a character, not an actress, but a character in Coronation Street.
Who was it?
It was Vera Duckworth in Coronation Street. That was her character's
Yeah.
name. Her name was Liz Dawn. And when we were at Granada Television, we were exactly the same height. And I wore, to start with, until I insisted on my
Yeah.
own, I wore her wigs, because she used to wear wigs in Coronation Street for a couple of years, and then she would change the wig. And I had her old wigs. And
Yeah.
we were exactly the same height, exactly the same build. And
Her old wigs, like her
her
used
old wigs, yeah.
It's a bit unhygienic.
No, it's not, because you put a stocking cap on, and there's all sorts of stuff underneath a wig
True.
that doesn't affect
Still,
you.
it's a bit weird.
Well, we did 2 series like that with her wigs, and but that's the problem. There's no budget for children's television, so we kind of use what you have to use what you can. And then I insisted on having my own wigs, and then so Mo's hair grew. She had longer. She looked like a country and western singer, really.
Yeah.
Dolly Parton.
Okay.
Is it more challenging to be a voice actor for a puppet than it is to act in person on screen?
Yeah, because funnily enough, I mean, people don't know that, but it takes an enormous amount of energy, actually, because you really are living this thing, and people say, they've swung the camera around on me, and I'm throwing my arms around and doing all sorts of things that I don't know I'm doing, but watching this character on the screen, I have to, put my whole soul into it. So yeah, it is quite demanding like that.
So you were featured in an episode of the game show Weakest Link. How did that come about, and what did you enjoy most about it?
Well, it was quite dramatic, actually, Florence, because no, it was good fun answering all the questions. But what happened was that the whole camera crew were not set up for filming puppets. And the walk of shame on the Weakest Link, when everybody, somebody is sent off and they have to walk off. Of course, the cameramen hadn't realised that they only filmed so much of the puppet and had to block out everybody else, or the figure taking the puppet off. They hadn't worked that out. And the actual technicalities of that meant that the poor audience were in there for hours and hours and hours. I mean, the thing's supposed to take, an hour, and they were in there for 5, 6, 7 hours. And it all took much, much longer than it should have done. And what happened was, as gradually people were going, and I was still there, it was quite funny because I couldn't quite believe that that I was actually still in it. And it ended up with me and Roland Rat. And he was cheating because he'd got his wife underneath the desk and she was telling him the answers, which wasn't fair. And basically I won it, which was lovely. And I rushed off into the green room at the end of it to see everybody and have a drink and a sandwich because I was absolutely gasping for a cup of tea or something. And everybody had gone. And they'd all gone because the whole thing had overrun because of the technical problems with it. And there was just a taxi driver there saying, "Oh, I've come to take you home." Like, I've just won the Weakest Link. And there's nobody here to say well done or anything. So it was a weird experience. But I phoned my brother when I got in the car and and he was quite pleased. And of course, that's what led on to doing Pointless, which was a complete and utter shambles. Pointless that I did, but that was as me. It wasn't as Soo.
So have you ever contributed to the scripts written for the character of Mo?
No, not Mo, but I certainly contributed to the scripts with Matthew at Granada. But no, not as Mo, because they were very funny. No, they were perfect. They didn't need any. They didn't need. In fact, they really made me laugh. I really enjoyed doing that. And I played other things before Mo was created. I was always. I was a perfume salesman in one of them, I know, and then I was a lady bowls captain, and then I was a. But anyway, Mo was the constant one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who would be your dream guest star for the Sooty Show?
Good question. While I'm thinking of that, I'll tell you what used to happen. Matt used to say to me, "Who should we have on Sooty this year?" And I would always ask for an alternative comic. Those people that are quite old now, people like Harry Hill and Paul Merton, and all quite old now. But who would I love to have on? Oh gosh, I wish I'd had time to think about that. I don't know. It would have to be an actor, I think. Now, it would have to be Judi Dench or somebody like that, I think. But a comedian, I don't know. Lee Mack would be quite good fun, I think, on Sooty. Yeah, Lee Mack, I think. Although he'd probably want to be the centre of attention. Bradley Walsh should come on too, because he's on everything else. And perhaps one of the Doctor Who's.
Oh, there's a lot of them now, isn't there?
Yeah, I have a very close friend, Colin Baker's my friend, and you're too young to remember him as Doctor Who, but I'm going to see him on Wednesday, as he's not been too well. So I'm going to see Colin. We work together a lot, and he's a really, really close friend.
Hope he gets.
Yeah. So,
Sorry about that. Sooty's just been doing some drawing.
has he? Oh, let's have a look.
He's drew a little smiley face.
Yeah. Well, that's jolly good. That's very good. Very, very good. Very clever of you, Sooty, to draw that.
In your own opinion, do you think the character of Soo has changed at all since she took over the role in 1981? And if it has, in which way?
Yeah. It's difficult, this question, because she completely changed character from when Marjorie first did it. And as I say, she got cleverer and cleverer and had more and more and more to say as Matthew wrote it. And then now she is much more of a backseat character. I think one of the reasons is, Florence, is that the nature of the presenter has changed, and that's what changes the characters of the puppets. Not necessarily Sooty and Sweet, but particularly Soo, because with Harry, Soo was a kind of a little girl that made the tea and sort of looked after them. Then with Matthew, she became the one that was in charge, because Matthew put himself on the same level as the puppets, if you see what I mean. So it was like Soo was the mum of Matthew, Sooty and Sweet, because he was such an idiot that she had to look after all three of them. And then Richard's come along and it's reverted back to the Harry thing, where he's looking after the three of them. He's still an idiot, but he's definitely in charge of them. So she's gone back to being a little girl again, which is probably right, really, because their ages are supposed to be, she's supposed to be 5, and Sooty's meant to be 5, and Sweet's meant to be 4. That's what they're meant to be, I think. If you believe that.
So, if Richard Cadell decided to sell Sooty, would you have any concerns that the show would be made too modern and lose its traditional charm?
Oh, do you know what, Myle? That's such a good question. I have a feeling that if Richard sold Sooty, I don't even think that is ever going to happen. I really don't think that's going to happen. I don't know. Who knows? It would be lovely to think it would still keep going on and on and on and on, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, Richard's got a son now, so it would be terrific if he took over. But I think pretty much if anybody was interested enough to take on the whole operation, you'd have to be in love with the kind of relationship that Sooty and Sweet have. The fact that Richard is still doing the same routines that Harry was doing 75 years ago, I think that has to remain almost like a showbiz tradition. And I don't think that should ever change.
Definitely. Okay. Thank you.
Have you encountered any issues on set when filming this for the Sooty Show?
Issues on what? Sorry, Ollie.
Have you encountered any issues when on set for filming the Sooty Show?
What sort of issues, darling?
In general, like anything that's gone wrong.
Oh, yes. All sorts of things have gone wrong. We had the most frightening thing once was the old custard pie things when you're chucking custard pies around. And Matt used to use shaving foam, and which was, you can whack that in your face. And this particular day, it was whacked in his face, and he was talking, and he ingested it, and it expands in your throat. And he was seriously choking and had no breath and was running around the studio. And it was very, very frightening. We thought he was going to be a goner. But anyway, he managed to come back from that. Another one, I mean, sometimes things are very funny, but that really was awful. I had the things that stick in my mind was we were doing an A to Z of animals. And there was a raven. We went through the alphabet and had different animals beginning with the letters. And there was this, no, it wasn't, it was a jackdaw. J is for jackdaw. And because the studio was dark, but I had a light on my dialogue, on my words, this raven kept flying across the studio and landing on my head and marching up and down on my head. And I was screaming. And they'd take the raven off my head and take jackdaw off my head. And then again, and it would come on my head. Oh, it was awful. And then it pooed all over my head. It's usually with animals you get issues. And then I was in a field and there was a tug of war between Sweep and Jeff Capes, who was our heavyweight champion at the time. And they were tugging on this rope. And we were filming at a farm. And I had a white wool fur coat on. And there was a sudden thump in the back of my back. And a goat had butted me up the back. and I ended up completely flat on my face in this field. So that was another issue, if you like. But Matt's sort of fallen down the stairs and done pratfalls, all the dangerous stuff, because he used to do stunts. He was hanging from a helicopter. He did a bungee jump. He did rock climbing in North Wales. All those dangerous things. Nothing seems to happen. It's always the little things you don't expect where you get the biggest disasters. But yeah, that's a few things.
Yeah, well, Sooty here got jealous of Sweet's praise for the picture. Yes, he did get jealous, don't you lie? So he decided to make his own. So says hi.
Oh my word, that looks good, doesn't it? That's very, very good.
He likes to think he's talented. He's really not.
Yes, of course he does. Yeah.
So you are the artistic director for the Farnham Rep Theatre Company. What does this role involve?
Well, we had a wonderful, 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 wonderful theatre in Farnham, which was knocked down in the year 2000. Best known, the reasons were the Arts Council thought that this theatre was too near to London and nobody needed it. It was only built in 1974 and it was a purpose-built theatre. And every single actor that ever worked there said it was the best theatre they'd ever worked for. It was mentioned in Parliament as the absolute model of a repertory theatre and how it should operate. The problem is, in this country, all the repertory theatres have disappeared. There's no training ground for actors anymore. There are probably a handful of repertory theatres left. Now, when the theatre was knocked down, a new company was formed. It wasn't not before it was knocked down to take a new company back in there, and we performed theatre in tents, in churches, in all sorts of things like that, because there was a tradition of theatre in the town, and I did that for several seasons. The problem is, because I was getting acting work as well and Sooty was there, I haven't been able to do too much lately, but I do try and keep the odd production going and keep the odd actor in work. But at the moment, I've got a couple of projects for the Farnham Repertory in the pipeline, and I've formed an alliance with a local theatre here in Borden where I live, and that's quite a good thing because that actually is a solid building with seats and lights and things, and we don't have to keep hiring marquees and things. So we've got a couple of projects in the pipeline for that. So that's what that entails. It's a lot of work and I do it all voluntarily. So there we are.
So Sweet thinks that he can one-up Sooty, and he wants to show you the caterpillar that he painted.
Well, that's remarkable, isn't it? Did you paint that, Sweet? Did you? Well, that's beautiful, isn't it? That's very clever. I'm not sure of that. I'm not sure that he painted that.
How do the puppets used on the TV show differ from the ones used for the live shows?
The live show ones are this is a television show one, and it's from the 90s, I think, and the stage show ones will probably have a head which is about that. Probably twice the size. Probably twice the size of these.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sue, I just stuck my finger in your eye. But yeah. So and she's kind of Sooty's changed a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Sooty's pretty much stayed the same, apart from the first one when she was like a mop. But she's pretty much stayed the same. She seemed to have a bigger head than the other two. And they don't like Soo on the television, on colour television, because apparently the white, this is cream on purpose. Yeah. The actual white ones, they flare, of course, on television. So I need to put a light on, don't I? Am I in the dark? Never mind. I'll glow in the dark. Yeah, so that's how they differ. And they've got a longer skirt, you know, so that the bit down the arm is called a skirt. And that's how you can tell with your own puppets. They're quite short.
My internet just got out for a bit there. Sorry about that.
Okay.
You have worked in panto. Is it as fun as it looks?
I don't like panto much. I have to be honest. It's absolutely exhausting. I just sometimes feel it doesn't tell a story. It keeps veering off. I'd much rather do a story for children at Christmas that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. I know it is fun. I mean, it's fun for the people in it. Is it? Having said that, I haven't done panto for 12 years. And guess what? Pretty Sweet Soo, Richard and I are doing panto at Woking this year. So I'm quite looking forward to that. So we are doing panto this year. We're doing Sleeping Beauty. And it's got my old mate Christopher Biggins in it. And so I am looking forward to that. So could you ask me that question on January the 9th? And I'll tell you if if it was good fun or not when it's all over. But my recollections are that it's exhausting. And I have to be honest, you know, somebody will get a cold and then you'll get it. And you've got to go out and give your all. And then it'll come back again. And people are always ill at Christmas. It's very jolly, isn't it? Very jolly. I'd like to say, oh, yes, it's marvellous. But it isn't. Anyway, that's what's happening this year. So I am looking forward to that because it might well be my last panto, I think. I might give it up after this. But actually, there isn't a lot of Sooty and Sweep in it. It's just they're kind of incidental. And I think there's only a little bit of Soo at the end coming on with the band. So it's more the characters that we're playing. Richard's playing Muddles and I'm playing the Queen, who's Sleeping Beauty's mum. So
interesting storyline, yeah. Apparently Sooty somehow got really competitive out of nowhere and he just won't let Sweep have the last say in this, and he's drawn something to show if he wants to bring it up. Hang on. He's drawn a picture.
Bring it near the camera, Florence. Oh, that's cool. These artists, that's brilliant. Oh, hello. Sweep's gone off again.
So, what do you prefer? Acting, directing, or voicing Soo? And can you tell us why?
I think I enjoy acting the most because, well, it's more mentally stimulating. I should say, voicing Soo, but I think acting is great because I enjoy being other people. And it's always a challenge. It's always a challenge acting. Directing, I love directing as well. I do love directing if I can help people. But I think acting's the answer to that, really. And
So, Sweep is also very competitive and wants to show Sooty this picture that you drew.
I love it.
It took him months.
Do you know what? I know Sweep. I know this for a fact that Sweep is a compulsive liar.
Something says touche.
Was he inspired by Basil Brush for that?
Yeah. Anyway, do you think that in the future, there might be any plans to possibly reintroduce older characters to the show, like Little Cousin Scamp, the snake Ramsbottom, or Butch the dog?
They have had small parts in the 75 years. I'm gonna walk around with this in the 75-year show, and but it's very much Richard's thing not to reintroduce them again. He doesn't. He's quite keen on not bringing them back, only for incidental appearances, because he feels, and I suppose quite rightly, that they might, because Sooty doesn't talk and he's magic, that it takes the attention away from Sooty, and he thought that that's what went wrong before, when we had Mickey the cat in one series, and so the answer to that is no. They won't. They'll only appear kind of incidentally. I mean, I love Butch. He makes me laugh a lot because he's so anarchic. But
Yeah.
it won't be. They will only be there in small incidental roles.
Yeah.
And they got quite a big outing this year in the 75-year show, birthday show. They were all in that. Particularly Butch, who was playing MC Butch. He was a DJ on that show, being hysterical.
So, Sweets just asked me to ask, do you know what the future holds for Sooty? And is there another series in the works for us to look forward to?
Yeah.
Or could there be even a movie?
The movie is just such a shame, because we have the most wonderful script, and I understand it's all to do with distribution. If you make a film, it has to be distributed, and it has to be distributed worldwide if you're going to make any money, and that means an American involvement. And as far as America is concerned, I think Richard was going to try and crack the States somehow. Harry tried, and it hasn't happened. We've had various people putting investment in. We're talking about millions and millions of pounds here as far as the movie is concerned. And it keeps coming and going away and coming and going away, I'm afraid, this movie. Whether it will ever get made, I don't know. But the script is there. It's got everything in it. It's a great storyline. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry. It's very brilliant. But it's just the investment that we need, or Richard needs to find. As far as the next series is concerned, I think this next one, we're already sort of on that. ITV have already bought it, so I've no doubt that'll be coming out in the next 6-7 months. And that's got the animated middles to it.
So I believe I might have the final question of the interview, which is, what advice would you give to anybody interested in a career in the entertainment industry?
Oh, would that I had some advice. Make sure it's something that you really, really, really want to do. I think I am also a patron of a drama school, and I see lots of brilliant young people going in, musical theatre people, absolutely brilliant. But there's nowhere for them to work. And I think my advice to people today is to try and get into the film industry, because I think that is where it's all happening. We don't have the work in the theatres aren't being funded, and the real acting work, it doesn't seem to be happening there. I think the thing is to get into the film industry if you can, really. I find that a very sad thing to say personally, because it's not been my experience, but yeah, I think that's my best tip if you want to get into the industry. Talent doesn't count for anything these days.
About how you present it, right? Brenda, thank you so much for being here with us today. It was a wonderful interview. I've enjoyed it so much.
Thank you, Florence. It's very, very sweet.
Great.
So have I. Really great to meet you all.
Now,
I think Sweet wants to show you something.
Oh, no, again. What's he got this time?
Sweep has come with the sword. Sweep's also a master sword fighter, apparently. I don't know where you got this from, Sweep.
Oh, sweet. You've pinched that from Excalibur, haven't you?
You did not pick up boxing this summer. Don't you like me?
Anyway, I think you should put this back, Sweep. It's a bit dangerous.
Now, let's all say goodbye in the traditional Sooty fashion. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.